podcast. I am 1/3 of the people that you're going to be listening to tonight. Alongside me, I have Steve. I'll pass the baton over to you in just a second. But today we have guest extraordinaire, 4-time Emmy Award winner, future dad, Chris Van Vliet. How are you?
Guys, so good to be on with you and always great to chat with some fellow Canadians.
Yeah, buddy. Appreciate you coming on. And again, congratulations on the little bundle of joy on the way. As a dad myself, I know how excited you are.
Thank you. And I will be hitting you up for the entire podcast here just for dad advice. I know nothing. I know nothing.
Now, I will say, Chris, I think that there's a really strong likelihood that your kid might actually have the opportunity to win the ever long-lasting schoolyard argument of whose dad is cooler. Because your resume and the things that you've done, the people that you've talked to, it's going to give the little one quite a bit of street cred in the playground to be able to win that argument of whose dad is cooler. Have you ever thought about that?
Not until this very second. Although if it came down to like, could my dad beat up your dad? The answer is absolutely not. No way at all. Your dad could throw a really good fake punch, maybe.
Hey, at the end of the day, she can brag that The Rock beats up on her dad more than he beats up on Kevin Hart. So
The Rock does make fun of me a good amount, which as a 16-year-old kid who used to walk around his high school asking people questions just so I could shout, "It doesn't matter what you think." It is the greatest honor that The Rock would ever think to make fun of me anytime that I spend time with him.
And of course, I mean, the Rock has to be up there with one of the coolest persons that you've probably interviewed. And I do have a question when it comes to your interviews. Is there an interview that comes to mind? And it doesn't have to be in professional wrestling, as much as we are a professional wrestling podcast, that makes you go, whoa, I can't believe that interview just happened. I can't believe I just got that nugget of information. Anything that stands out in your years of interviewing celebrities and professional wrestlers?
There's so many of them. Like, there's so many moments where like you get the invite to interview so-and-so for some big movie. And like that in itself is like, oh my gosh, you're telling me I get to talk to Tom Cruise. Like that time was like in Paris in front of the Eiffel Tower. Like just like knowing that you're going to do that sometimes is like oh my gosh, or like I get to talk to Steven Spielberg about a movie that he made. Like, this is insane. But there's definitely some moments, and I'm sure that you guys have experienced this too, where like the person is in the middle of telling a story and you're going, I can't believe like I am sitting here and like witnessing this happening. And one that immediately comes to mind is I had the great opportunity to interview Henry Cavill like 10 years ago for a movie called Immortals. And it had just come out that he had been cast as Superman and was like just starting to like go through that process. And not a ton of people had really asked him about it. And I asked him like what it was like to put the Superman costume on for the first time. And he gave me this like amazing answer about like putting it on, seeing the S on his chest, looking in the mirror. And like, those are the type of moments where you're just like, I just can't believe this is happening. And those are also kind of the moments where you like, rush to your laptop and try to get it on YouTube as soon as possible.
Of course.
Yeah, I get that. And I think the one for myself, Chris, just to say that we have experienced that, is when we actually interviewed Big Vito LaGrasso. It was one of our first wrestlers that we ever got to connect with. And he told us about a conversation between Hulk Hogan and Vince Russo. And he was the only other person sitting in the room. And it was the night of the notorious like finger poke of doom screw job, and we got to find out some details of that behind it. We actually never posted it because he goes, I'll tell you this one off the cuff, but I was like, what? Like, wow. This is what we can expect for the future. And then obviously getting the email from yourself saying, hell yeah, I'll come and sit down and chat with you guys. So yeah, this is a surreal moment for both of us.
Well, how could I not want to come on? Especially like it was insane to me last week that I was somehow the subject of one of your Guess the Wrestlers. Are you kidding me?
Listen.
I never would have guessed myself there, right. By the way.
Well, that's the thing. Like, there's a ton of people, and Chris, we deal with it all the time. This is stage. This is fake. There's no way that Steve was able to guess The Rock as the Tooth Fairy for Guess the Wrestler. Look, we have done so many ridiculous things. We have done the Spanish announce table as a guest the wrestler. We've done Cody Rhodes' torn pec. Like the concept of guest the wrestler just goes so far and wide. So honestly, you aren't the craziest, most difficult thing that we've done as part of guest the wrestler, because as soon as Steve was able to narrow it down to interviewer or journalist in the world of professional wrestling, there's not too many that come to mind that professional wrestling fans would know. And that also, like, we've already laid the groundwork as to what you do. You interview celebrities left, right, and center, professional wrestlers. What's your favorite pro wrestling interview? I know that's putting you on the spot here, and I should have maybe given you some time to maybe think about this, but I wanted an off the cuff answer to see what is the first thing that comes to your head so that you can't premeditate the answer.
So my favorite interview that I've done?
Yeah.
I mean, there's been so many, right? Like, this is asking a father to name their favorite child. But yeah, my favorite child in this case would definitely be The Rock, Like,
of course.
I think that's the safe answer.
It's one of those where, like, I was such a huge wrestling fan in the late 90s. The Attitude Era is really what sucked me in. So much of, like, those formidable years of my life were because of who The Rock was, both in the ring and outside of the ring. And I just loved the way that he had charisma oozing out of him, whether he was holding a microphone or having a match. So he was my guy. And then fast forward all those years later, the first interview I did with him was like 10 years ago. And he's everything you could ever want him to be. And they always say, like, you shouldn't meet your heroes. But if your hero is Dwayne Johnson, you should do whatever you can to meet your hero, because he's kind, he's funny, he's charismatic, and he has this self-awareness about him where he brings you into the moment and he includes you in that moment. So it's not just this moment where the spotlight is shining on him, but he shares the spotlight with the person that he's having that conversation with. And he just sees you. And this will sum it up really well. So I interviewed him for Black Adam a few months ago. It was the 10th interview that I'd done with him. Not that I'm counting or anything. And I happened to be in the hotel the night before, and I was seeing some of my friends who had flown into town. And my one buddy goes, hey, I think The Rock's actually going to walk by here in a second. So, like, just hold tight here, because that's his security guy. So just let's see what happens. A few minutes later, sure enough, The Rock walks through the lobby. And we're expecting The Rock to walk through and us to kind of go, ooh, that's The Rock. The Rock walks through, spots us, walks over and goes, Jake, Chris, how are you guys? And I'm like, holy crap. Like, he did not need to take the time to, like, come over and say hi. And somehow, I haven't talked to him in 4 years. Somehow he remembers our names. And he also goes, oh, Chris, you still living in Miami? I'm like, no.
Holy smokes.
Wow.
How do you remember this? So, like, it's those types of things that, like, that he's not putting that on. That's just who Dwayne Johnson is as a person.
Yeah, Steve has some pretty cool stories about meeting, because he's worked in, I guess, like, what would you call it, like in the event Coliseum world. So you've had the chance to work with to talk with some wrestlers in the back.
Yeah. So you've been in the area. I used to run the bars and concessions in the Kitchener Auditorium. Before that, I was their distribution guy, but my boss knew I was a diehard wrestling fan. So when WWE came and did their house shows in 03, 04, 05, 06 on the road to WrestleMania, I was the pick to make sure everything back in catering was up to snuff. And then I stood back there and I literally mingled with everyone, the likes of Kurt Angle, John Cena, Rey Mysterio, Tori Wilson. I always say this to Santi and a lot of our followers. I had a 1 hour conversation with Eddie Guerrero sitting at catering, and 6 months later he passed away. But I will say that interview actually or that sit down conversation changed my life, because I didn't get like lie, cheat, and steal Eddie. I got Eddie. And it was amazing because he asked about me, very much like The Rock came and spoke with you. Eddie came and sat at the table I was sitting at. I was by myself. And he goes, oh, hey, hola. And then he comes and, like, the character turned off. So getting to meet guys that you idolize, and you and I aren't far apart in age, so we came through the same Attitude Era into the Ruthless Aggression. Like, it's one of those ones where you sit there and you're like, damn, what's next? And how is this conversation going to push me in the right direction to interview the next people, right? And how am I going to change myself? And that Eddie conversation is probably the reason Santi and I are sitting here right now.
Yeah,
that's a story that very few people have. That's incredible.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have any of those. I think the only interaction I have with a conversation with a wrestler, it was at the John Labatt Center in London. It was a house show. The Rock had just defeated Kane, but he got chokeslammed, and I was near the front row. He's going around giving people the high fives, and I'm like, Rocky, did the chokeslam hurt? He goes, yeah. And no word of a lie, Chris and Steve, that little the acknowledgement from The Rock literally changed my path into becoming a diehard Dwayne Johnson fan, to the point where my dog's name is Dwayne the Dog Johnson. That is so my dog's name. No word of a lie, on his collar, little wiener dog named Dwayne the Dog Johnson. I in my head, and I'm sure every professional wrestling fan has this moment that they carry with them for the rest of their life, is a promo from The Rock in Toronto in 2003, which is, I am the jabroni beaten, pie eaten, trailblazing, eyebrow raising, stronger than a bear, faster than a buck, the biggest thing to hit Canada because the Toronto Maple Leafs suck, will never ever leave. It's going to be one of those things where, I'm 60, 70, I'm going to remember that.
That promo is just brilliant.
Oh, so good.
Like yay, that's where I live. I'm like, oh my God, it's so good. It's funny. I was describing The Rock's character to someone recently who's not a huge wrestling fan. Like, they only know Dwayne Johnson. Yeah. They don't know The Rock. And I'm like, he's kind of a bully. And yeah, and it's funny that you say that now in hindsight, but that character that's what he did. He made fun of people.
Yeah.
What made him great, because it was hard to hate him. He bullied people, but it was hard to hate him because he was so good at being a bully.
Speaking of bullying, Chris, we have to talk about what happened to you with Sean Spears, because we all believe that was you did it to yourself. To be fair, but there's a wince bit of, man, I feel like Sean's enjoying this. Every single chop that is happening right now to your chest. Tell us about that experience.
For sure, he enjoyed this. So if we take this back about 6 months before that, I had done an interview with him. It was his first interview since leaving WWE. He hadn't quite announced that he was going to AEW yet, but I was in Central Florida. I was doing an interview for a Disney movie and staying at a Disney resort. And I said, all right, let's do this. I'm in your area. Let's make this happen. So he came to the hotel. We did that interview. It went great. It got a lot of views online. He ended up announcing he was going to AEW a few days later. So the timing was really good. And he goes, well, I'm opening up this wrestling school. You're welcome anytime. And I said, I will take you up on that for sure. Because I trained at one point when I was in college. I trained for a few months at the Squared Circle in Toronto. I'm like, I'd love to come, run the ropes, take some bumps, maybe do a body slam or two. He's like, you are my guest. You're welcome anytime. So that was January of 2020 when I went there. And I really thought that I was just going to go. We were going to do an interview with Sean, do an interview with Tyler Breeze, run the ropes a little bit, take a bump. And he goes, well, how about I give you a chop?
He set you up.
I'll take a chop. No big deal. I said, why don't we make this a little bit more interesting? If we're making a YouTube video here, why don't we have all of your students line up and they can all chop me? And there was 8 students there. I thought, yeah, I can take 8 chops from these students. He goes, done. And we started rolling. And while we're rolling, he goes, all right, so what I didn't tell you is everybody gets 2 chops plus us. Oh, that's 20. Okay. And the first few, they weren't great. And some of these chops were the first chops that these students had ever given before. And then when we got towards the end, my chest was already red and welted and bruised. And, then steps in Tyler Breeze and Sean Spears. And those felt personal. They were bad. And I look back at this video 3 years later now, and I'm like, oh, I would never, ever do that again, I don't think.
Now, that leads me into my question for this segue, because you got the chops from Sean Spears. And somebody, just so you know, Chris, I got the pleasure to go to Clash at the Castle. I flew out and I got to see arguably one of the greatest matches of 2022 between Sheamus and the Ring General Gunther. Would you ever consider taking one from Gunther?
Look, I'm not the type of person who's ever going to say no to anything. So sign me up. I just don't think I could take 20 from him.
You know what? I think there's a different, in terms of experiences, right? I've always said there's two types of experiences that humans say are fun. The ones that are objectively fun, going to a theme park, playing basketball, things that are objectively fun. And then there are the things that are in the moment are horrible. But the story that you get to tell and the recollection of that moment, and maybe even the adversity of going through that moment in the future becomes a fun story. So I think, if it were to come down to chops from Gunther, I think you'd have a pretty pleasant memory from it. Maybe not at the moment, but something to consider.
I think it's one of those things that, would I do it if we weren't recording it? Would I do it just to say that I did it? No, 100%, no chance. If we're recording this and we're going to put it out there and we're doing it for the gram, we're doing it for the talk, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Hey, sign me up.
Listen, Chris, Santi and I have a bet. If we ever hit 1 million on TikTok, he gets to put me through a table. So... And we said we were going to do it at Bill's Mafia. So that's one of those ones where I've kind of set myself up for failure, but it's going to be a great story by the end of it.
The pace that you guys are growing at, you're going to be at 1 million before the next NFL season starts. So you're going to have to come up with something else here, I think.
Perhaps. But we Steve and I set that goal up when we hit maybe like 30,000 followers, and more so as this will never happen. And now I think Steve is like, oh dear God, it's coming, it's coming up. And I was very on board. Like, yes, absolutely. 100%. I'll put Steve through a table. There was one conversation in one interview that you did that's got me concerned about doing it. And it was your experience taking the Impaler DDT from Gangrel. Because Steve and I, he has more professional wrestling experience than I do. He's taken bumps before. I never have. After hearing that story, somebody who has been through wrestling school like yourself, has experience taking bumps, you knew what you're about to, the move that you were about to take, and it was still a fairly scary experience for you. Can you tell us a little bit about what was going through your head before the DDT, when you were down in the ring, and maybe afterwards? Because maybe that's one of those, hey, it wasn't fun at the moment, but now looking back on it, it's a fun experience I can talk about. Or maybe it really just isn't.
That moment is still scary to think about. So I was a backyard wrestler in high school, and I don't know if it's something I'm very proud of anymore, but I was certainly proud of it when I was 16 and 17 years old. And we took a lot of DDTs. I mean, that's such an easy move to give and take when you're on like a trampoline, or in our case, we were on like the blue gym crash mats. Was our ring for our backyard wrestling federation. So when I did this segment at Gangrel's Wrestling School in Dania Beach, Florida, we did all the typical basic stuff. We locked up, we hit the ropes, we did a few scoop slams. And I was like, Gangrel, it would be an absolute honor if I could take your finisher, the Impaler DDT. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. We can do that. So we're filming this TV segment because I was working for the Fox station in Miami. And I was thinking, man, what a cool way to like show him doing the move in like the WWE and then show me taking the move. Like, oh man, what a way to end this segment. So we go in and I jump just a little bit too high. And, he's a big dude. He's a strong dude. He's guiding me through the move he's done, for 25 years. And I just jumped a little bit too high. So instead of flattening my body out and landing mostly on like the chest and the knees a little bit, jumped a little bit too high. So I came down like a true impaler and like landed right on my head. And it knocked the wind out of me. I land on my head. My back kind of like folds over. My legs are like, kind of on, it's like the weird yoga pose. My legs are like going over my head and I roll over. I'm out of breath. He knows that something's wrong. You can see the look on his face like, oh my God, what did I just do? He covers me for the pin on TV. And then he leans over and he goes, dude, you're going to get yourself killed. And I'm like, and that was like, me just trying to catch my breath. But I had this really scary moment where after I landed, where I'm like, can I feel my
Yes.
arms?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can feel my arms. Can I feel my legs? Okay, I can feel my legs. Okay, all right, we're good. There's also like this weird moment in my mind where I'm like, what if things had gone the other way? Like, what if it was a millimeter or a centimeter, an inch, whatever, one way or the other, and like I was being taken out of there in an ambulance, like while we were trying to film this TV segment. That part really scares me because we were clearly trying to do this for entertainment. And thank God everything was okay. And this is not, Gangrel is a true professional. I messed this up in a bad way. But I think about it all the time of like how incredibly fortunate and grateful I am that I'm still here and, can move my arms and legs.
Everything you just said hits home so much. Like I had your exact one-to-one experience when I was playing football in high school. For our European listeners or South American listeners that don't know, I'm talking about American football here real quick. But I was a kick returner. Basically, they kick the ball, you bring it back, and it's one of the most dangerous plays. It is the entire the return team going at full speed, and then the cover team going at full speed. The kickoff is always the most dangerous play in all of football. I was going through, bobbing and weaving through some people, at least in my head. I really made myself look good, but then I put my head down and a guy coming in at full speed hit me in the top of the head. And everything you just described, I think I went a little bit backwards because my first thought wasn't about collecting my breath. My first thought was, can I move? Can I move my limbs? Can I move my arms? And I was having such a tough time, like, reacting to the whole situation, and it wasn't until after the fact that I realized it's because I'm winded. And that's so weird to me that a head hit like that, an injury like that could wind you, because my first thought was, hey, I'm this is it, like I'm not walking out of here. Steve, have you ever had anything like that?
No, I slipped off of a bar I was dancing on once, but other than that.
Wait, what bar were you at?
Yeah, where was this? I know all of your bars.
Finn McCool's in Kitchener when it first
Finn McCool.
Finn McCool's in Kitchener. I slipped off the bar and just crashed down basically on the back of my head, and the bartender that was working with me looked at me and went, that wasn't smooth. And there was like a whole crew of like girls at the one big table that was there. And I was like, I really don't want to stand back up because this is embarrassing as all hell. So yeah.
Can I run down some of my favorite bars in Kitchener-Waterloo and you can tell me if they still exist?
Please.
First off, if you don't name Dirty Phil's first, come on.
Look, I lived on Lodge Street. We were
same.
Spitting distance. You lived on
Lodge
Street?
Yeah, I lived on Lodge.
14 Lodge Streat.
Oh, I was 33. I wasn't too far from you.
We're across the road.
Yeah.
So Phil's, of course. I think
100%.
Phil's, nothing could kill Phil's. Phil's is like the Twinkie of bars.
Yeah, don't look up, don't look down, and you'll have a good time at Phil's. Yeah. That seems to be the general rule of thumb there. Any other ones that you remember?
Loose Change Louie's, I understand, does not exist anymore.
Gone. Yeah, gone. I think the actual building burnt down.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, because you remember Mel's Diner?
Of course.
Mel's Diner, Foo Bar, and Caesar Martini's. Foo Bar and Mel's Diner burnt down due to a gas explosion, and Caesar Martini's is gone, which was a great little bar. I'm sure you went to that quite a few times.
That was like right after I graduated. That became a thing. What about Filthy McNasty's?
Not there anymore, but I love that place.
Yeah, that Filthy
what about
McNasty's
the Rev?
was great.
Rev it's been gone for a long time. It rebranded as something called Pearl. And then now it's gone. It's weird because it's still there. It's like a haunted building, it seems, because they haven't changed it's still apparently a club, just no one can go to it.
Okay. What about the Silver Spur?
The Spur is now it went from Silver Spur to Chainsaw, and Chainsaw then sold to a new group, and it's now some Caribbean bar that is not doing very well.
Well, and I'm sure the Turret still exists.
Yes, at Laurier. That's a Laurier one. That's a Laurier one. Yeah.
Laurier on campus bar, the Turret and Wilfs.
Yep.
They're one.
Okay, good. Thank you for bringing me, taking me down memory lane here. I really appreciate
Not a problem.
that.
No, of course we got you. You know, it's great to be a Laurier Golden Hawk. I don't know if that little chant was around when you were at Laurier. Now, Chris, I do want to, maybe talk about, before we actually get into professional wrestling and like what's going on right now. Are you aware that in the TikTok pro wrestling community that you are a sort of Joan of Arc folk hero after your conversation with Vliet when he confronted you about, do you know that pro wrestling is fake? And like to all of us, Chris, that is a question that, especially in a situation like that we've all wished we were there and ready to answer. And you had that chance to do it in a high pressure situation because Bradley is a big personality, and it would have been really easy for you to back down and just say, yeah, I can see where you're coming from. It's a little bit silly, but you really you defended the product, and everyone on TikTok absolutely fell in love with you after that. Steve, I saw you wanted to chime in there.
Yeah, like Chris, before you answer this, I just need to say from someone in the TikTok wrestling community, not just saying straight shoot, but that was an alpha response. Santi loves the word alpha and brands himself as an alpha. That was a key alpha response. Please run us through that and how you stayed so composed as a wrestling fan on his show.
Yeah.
Well, he was a guest on my show like 6 months before, so then I was a guest on his show. But the points he was making just didn't make any sense. And it's like I wasn't trying to start an argument. I was just like being like, what you're saying doesn't make any sense. Oh, they're running around like it's fake. It's like, well, do you like movies? Yeah, of course I like movies. It's like, well, that's the end of the argument then. Like,
yeah.
I don't feel like you can just end the clip right there. But the weird thing about that was, if you watch the full interview, that was like 2.5 minutes into an hour-long interview. And he's already like coming out of the gates like, he was talking about like, who's the person that you like really love interviewing? And I said, oh, well, I was a big wrestling fan growing up. And I was about to like be like, no, so that means it's The Rock. And he's like, wait a second. You like wrestling? It's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, I still do. Don't you know that's fake? And it's like, oh, okay, all right.
Here we go.
What are we talking about? But it's the weirdest thing to me that no one would stand outside of Avatar: The Way of Water and go, did you guys like that? Okay, well, I just want to let you know it's fake, actually. Like, at what point did we, like, I just don't understand. Like, wrestling is a television program, a very entertaining television program that is live, and it takes an incredible amount of skill to do this. I don't know why people try to just like boil this down to it's fake. Everything on TV is fake. No one's going, you like Game of Thrones? You know it's fake, right? You like Friends? You know it's fake. Like, it's all fake. That's the part I just don't understand about any of this.
Yeah.
I think the points that he was making, and I think we've all been in this argument 100 times over, but you just had the biggest platform to express the counter argument. Like, growing up in high school, wrestling's fake. Why do you watch wrestling? Well, the injuries are real. The bumps are real. The bruises are real. Oh, but when they bleed, they cut themselves.
Still blood. It's still blood.
Like we saw it recently with Gunther and Ricochet. Like it still hurts. Like, come on.
I think the thing is, a lot of people who aren't wrestling fans try to put this into the same category as football and baseball and basketball and hockey, where like, when you're watching the Leafs play the Canadiens, you don't know who's going to win. Fair enough. When The Rock takes on John Cena and somebody in the back has written out a script and knows who's going to win, it doesn't mean that the fans don't know who's going to win, or the fans can't be enjoying the ride that this is taking you on. Like, and I think that the other argument is like, well, they're acting it out like it's real.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens when you go to a Broadway show. Like, they're acting it, and no one's going to complain that the guy standing up there isn't actually Alexander Hamilton. Like, we get that we're going to see a show and we're going to suspend our disbelief and just enjoy the product. And that's the thing, like what you like.
Yeah.
And be okay that people like something that maybe you don't like. That's all right.
Yeah, it's a really bizarre situation that wrestling fans, young and old, are always put in at some point or another by friends, family members, or whatever. It's just really odd that this is one of those very few mainstream hobbies, because I would say that professional wrestling is mainstream. It's one of those mainstream hobbies that people need to justify. And I've always thought that that's very bizarre. Like, why do I don't ask you as to why you have to justify liking Breaking Bad. You know, are you aware that this high school chemistry teacher did in fact not start an entire meth empire? It's just make believe. It's a story to entertain you. But yeah, wrestling fans through and through their entire life have been put in that corner of, do you know that's fake? Why do you like professional wrestling? And I think that's why that clip really resonated with the entire community, because it was just like, yes, somebody has voiced it so well. And again, like, we were just so impressed with, because it was a high pressure situation, right? Like he was really coming at you, and like we say, it was his show. Bradley is a big personality, so yeah, I guess as from us. And when I say us, the TikTok community, thank you, Chris. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate it.
I would do it every single time. So I didn't think that would blow up to be what it was. But then again, every video I've ever had that has gotten a bunch of views, I've never expected any of them to do well. And you guys probably know this from the stuff you're posting. Some of the stuff you think is just going to crush.
Of course.
Falls flat. And then some weird video, like I had one of me throwing a spear during the Spartan race that I did, and it got like 6 million views. And I'm like, I was expecting that to get like 90 views, not 6 million.
Hey, we ended up, we did Little Jimmy twice.
Guess the wrestler.
Yeah, we did Little Jimmy, and we thought this is so stupid. And Santi's reaction was so annoyed by it. And I was just like, no, this is going to get views. And it ended up getting like 600, 700,000 views
so
overnight.
Good. Has Katie Vick been one of the answers yet?
TikTok took it down.
Took it down.
Yeah, everything we've done, that was the only one that's too far. We were and we're pretty certain that was a manual review, because there was nothing, like we didn't say anything vulgar, there was no nudity or anything like that. We didn't use a video of Triple H climbing into the casket or anything like that. So we think it was a manual review, somebody saying nope, too far. Out of all the videos we've done, that is the only one that's been actually taken down by TikTok.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Removed, and no argument on it either. We couldn't appeal anything.
Yeah, it was just done.
Nope.
Well, if only we could actually erase Katie Vick, from wrestling history.
There's a couple of things I think some wrestling fans would like to remove from the annals of professional wrestling that are just. But you know what? Sometimes it's those things that make it so endearing, like Mark Henry's hand baby, right? Like, sure. Yeah. Looking back on it, at the time, probably a very weird storyline, but Steve and I hold Mae Young's hand baby very near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah,
I asked Mark Henry about it, and he's like, yeah, he's 5 years old. Oh, come on. I think it's funny to me how in pro wrestling, there's like, they just kind of give up on storylines sometimes. I feel like the hand baby is one of them. And I feel like Hornswoggle being the butt of so many jokes is also an example of that.
Yeah. It seems like he's kind of the get out of jail free card when they don't know where to go with a storyline. It's like, it was Hornswoggle from under the ring.
We were just kidding. LOL.
Well, I mean, we're going to wrap this up here, Chris, the podcast portion of this. But let's talk about what's going on in the world of professional wrestling today. We had okay. So I want to lay the ground floor here. For a while, Chris, in terms of our podcast and talking about professional wrestling, and Steve, I want you to chime in here. It felt for the first half of the year that we were kind of just running through the motions, like another episode of Monday Night Raw, another episode of SmackDown. Guess we got to talk about this. Guess we got to talk about that. And now professional wrestling is some of the most exciting television around, and I think in my opinion, professional wrestling is the most exciting it's been since arguably the last 15 years. There's some things in between there, like the CM Punk John Cena storyline, The Rock coming back, but they didn't last kind of like this period of professional wrestling has lasted over the last 6 months in terms of it just being quality television. What's your favorite thing going on in wrestling today? And I feel like there's a lot to choose from. Don't feel like you have to just answer WWE stuff.
Well, I will say that what's interesting about the last 6 months was I think there were a lot of WWE fans in particular who were continuing to watch Raw and SmackDown just because they'd always watched Raw and SmackDown. And then something happened right around SummerSlam where we went, ooh, I mean, I've been watching all along, but like, this is really getting good here. And I love watching everything. I've been saying for a long time that this is the best time to be a pro wrestling fan. Like with everything going on with AEW, WWE, Impact is doing such amazing work and have so many great matches going on there. But I think the most entertaining thing right now, as we sit here at the beginning of 2023, is anytime Sami Zayn is on your screen.
Yes!
What's so fascinating about that is I don't think they set him up to win with this. I think they just kind of set him up like, hey, you don't really have much else going on. We'll just throw you in the storyline. He has taken this baton and ran with it, and he is absolutely crushing it that no matter who he's sharing the screen with, all you want to do is look at Sami. He's so damn entertaining.
Yeah, it's funny, Chris. Santi and I had a discussion about this previously on one of our pods where we said that this isn't the first time we've seen this with Sami Zayn. Every time he's put in a position to run with something, whether it be good or whether it be bad, the man can run with it and turn it into gold. And he's now been given the long-term storytelling that we have been begging for as wrestling fans for the better part of 10 years because we haven't seen it. We've gotten more backstage segments. We've gotten all the even the social media segments that we've been getting before Raw comes on the air. We've gotten all that, and Sami's been a huge core part of that. And it's been incredible, and he does not get enough credit where credit is due because he's one of the hardest workers both in the ring and outside of the ring, and it just shows in this entire Sami Zayn bloodline thing.
I think this WWE does this thing where people are in the mid card and they're kind of like relegated to the mid card like forever. And then you see some people that are able to break out. And like, I think that what happened with Daniel Bryan around WrestleMania 30 is like a perfect example of that, of like, you're just working your ass off and the fans are noticing and then the fans get behind you. And that's what we're seeing right now with Sami. And it's so exciting to watch. And it's also exciting because you feel like you're on this ride with him too.
Oh, that's it. I think that's the best way to put it. It does feel like a ride. And yeah, like Steve said, like we all knew Sami was capable of this. And he's, being put in a situation where he had to put over a match with a big mousetrap. No one can do that except Sami Zayn. I really genuinely believe that. The man can get anything over. It's just, I feels like this is the first time where they're like, okay, we won't halt it. Keep it going. Keep it going. And it's been magic. Steve, it sounds like your answer is also Sami Zayn.
Oh, 100%. And I was just going to add one more thing, Chris. Like, I'm going to Montreal for the SmackDown and the Elimination Chamber and the Ottawa Monday Night Raw, making a weekend of it. But the Montreal crowd, when the Bloodline comes out and Sami Zayn is there, we always say the best crowds are the Canadian crowds. They are so hot. Next to like Chicago, Brooklyn, they're really good. But the Canadian, Montreal, Toronto crowds are hot. Santi and I actually took over the WWE Instagram in August during Gargano's return. They ended up pinning us because we were just losing our minds. It was crazy. But it's one of those ones, Montreal, and with what Sami is doing now, it's going to be the culmination of basically everything Sami has done over the last 6 to 8 months, and it is going to be so hot, so fire. I cannot wait.
I can't wait to watch that. That's amazing that you're going there.
Yeah, got some nice Christmas gifts.
Clearly. Well, folks, I think that's going to wrap it. I'm glad that we finished on the Sami Zayn conversation. I think anytime we get a chance to talk honorary Oos, I'm smiles from ear to ear. Chris, where can people find you?
I'm on YouTube at Chris Van Vliet. If this is on TikTok, that's also my name there. So it's just at Chris Van Vliet wherever. My podcast is Insight with Chris Van Vliet. And guys, just thank you. thank you for having me on, and congrats to you on the growth. And also congrats on having the foresight to go, this thing is working, let's jump on that and continue the growth. Because I think there's a lot of people in this space that go, well, the thing I've been doing doesn't work. Well, stop doing that thing then. Maybe start doing something else and trying that. So congrats to you guys on trying something else, seeing that it's working, and then jumping on that and continuing with it.
We appreciate that, Chris. Steve, any parting words here?
No, Chris, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time with us. It is much appreciated. I sent that email off at 4:30 in the morning, and you got back to me within like 4 hours, which blew my mind. So I do appreciate you responding and sitting down with us and just sharing your insights in the world of professional wrestling and, broadcast and being podcasters, because we're young, we're new. We've only been doing this 14 months, and we're sitting down with a guy who knows pretty much the ins and outs of it. So thank you. Much appreciated.
My pleasure. I'm doing this in exchange for a quarter chicken dinner at Swiss Chalet, just so you guys know.
Nice.
Next time you're in town, it's on me.
I miss Swiss Chalet so much.
All right, folks. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Straight Shooter Wrestling Podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, please consider leaving this video a like, a comment, and subscribe if you're listening on audio services around the world. Whatever service you're using, they're all different, so you can leave a review. It can be 5 stars. It could, I don't know. They're all different in terms of reviews. And figure out how to leave a review in your audio service, and please leave us a positive one. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Straight Shooter Wrestling Podcast. Take care and be good people.